Hello, I'm Jacques Halbronn. I started already quite a lot of lectures on French astrology, in French astrological vanguard, research, reform, and well, I try to convey a certain climate about the French astrological life, French astrological thought, and it may be interesting to compare with what people feel about their astrology in other parts of the world. So today I will speak. We had this European elections yesterday. It was an interesting result, which deserves a certain commentary. But more generally, I would like to speak about the mission of astrology. Is it to predict? Is it to prevent? Is it to prescribe? Is it to console? To advise? I think it's very important to know what we are doing with astrology, and on what level we can express something astrologically. There are a certain number of traps in this field, because I think one of the major traps is to believe that anything which happens in the world has an astrological replica, astrological correspondence, and that we all act according to astrology. I don't believe that. I think that there are many things we could do and which are not in agreement with astrology. That's what Rudyard thought too. Astrology is not necessarily the mirror of what we do. But if it's not the mirror of what we do, it means that we need to know what astrology is. And the problem is that since astrologers themselves do not know what astrology is, they are tempted to accept the idea that astrology is a mirror, it's a radiography, a radioscopy. And this is a sort of solution which is not a real solution. The problem is that who says that something is not astrologically written is an expression which doesn't mean much for many astrologers, because they are only capable to explain with astrology, with a chart of the person, chart of the event, and it's nearly impossible for them to say it doesn't correspond, because astrology is a sort of language. For instance, I say, oh, this event doesn't correspond to English. What does that mean? English can express all sorts of things, so there is nothing that English cannot express. So to say astrology cannot explain something is as absurd as to say that I cannot say certain things in English. And this is a problem, because astrology is actually not a language, not a language in that sense, in contradiction with what some astrologers tend to think, and maybe they do not have any choice about that. So, if astrology is just a language, and you just translate certain basic general knowledge that people have into astrological expressions, and that's all. And you always find, of course, expressions. It's like writing a poem and being forced to use certain words to write your poem. That's all. If you are a good poet, or if you are a good writer, you can always deal with certain obligations of words or subjects. You can always use them, and it's express yourself as you want. So it's a sort of game in a way. Most astrologers practice astrology as a sort of game. You have certain descriptions, non-astrological descriptions about a person, about a fact, about an event, and you have to find in the chart elements which correspond to these descriptions, words which correspond. It's not such a difficult story. It's an exercise, a semantical exercise. So if we do not go in this direction of explaining, of commenting astrological situation and justifying itself in a certain way, we have other choices. But as I said, you need to have a pattern to be able to say, well, this is what the pattern says, and if it's not in the pattern, then it's something which is not relevant in a certain way, reliable. For instance, if I say this period of 3 years is propitious, encourages a certain process of unification, of alliance, of federation. And let us imagine that during this period that you are describing in advance, there are cases of separation, of divorces, of refusal to unite. What will you say? You have two solutions. Or you will say that you failed in your prediction, that the facts rule against your prediction. That's a possibility. And the other way is to say that the cases which are mentioned to you illustrate a certain failure, not of astrology, but of the people themselves. They try certain things, but they fail. So a failure is not exactly what I could call the result of astrological prediction. Or I could say that, yes, I could say, if you do not try to unite, to build bridges between people, between groups, between structures, then you will fail. That's a way of predicting things. And I think it's quite a good way, in fact. Yeah. Saying, if you don't do that, then it won't work. Good. So you make a prediction. It's a prediction. You don't do that, you fail. You do that, you won't fail. Well, that's not as symmetrical as it could seem, in fact. Yeah. Failure is more interesting to announce than success. So I prefer to say, if you don't do that, you fail, and you will be punished for that in a way. Yeah. So I like the reference to prophets, to biblical prophets like Jonas. You can tell people to avoid this and this, and that if you do not avoid this and this, then will be punished, and they will be chastised. And good. So it's a sort of negative prediction. If you don't do that, then it won't work. If you do that, well, it will work. But my thinking in general is to say what is important is to avoid problems and not to bet on positive results. On one side there are problems, evil. On the other side there is a normal course of things. I wouldn't oppose evil to good. No. you act if you act normally, nothing negative will happen. That's all. Nothing extraordinary. It will go smoothly. But if you don't respect certain principles, then you will have problems and illusions, etc. But there's also the idea of, this is what I call counsel. You give a counsel. Counseling is not just saying what's going to happen. Counseling is to advise not to do certain things, not to try certain things, because it's not the proper time. Maybe later, but not now. Later, at the next process, in the next period, maybe that will work. But for the time being, no. Avoid that. Do something else. That's how I call a counselor is someone who says what not to do more than he says what to do. And because the best thing we can do for some people is to tell them where is the danger, where is the peril, what's wrong. And a body also has to identify the danger, the intrusions in its body, in its physical body, but it's true also for the social body, social core. So, good. Now prevention has another meaning. Prevention means there is something which is written and try to avoid it. That's another story also. Right? Not exactly the same. So I prefer counseling. I prefer coaching, counseling. And counseling indicating the traps, the temptation, what can go wrong. I will give you another example, always in this limits of my work on cycles, in astral cycles. For instance, we are in what I call a Venusian period, Venus. Nothing to do with the planet Venus. It's like the dasas in astrology. It's just a period which I call like that because it gives a sort of atmosphere that's not connected with the planet itself. Like when I say there is a phase, a period of Mars, it doesn't mean that Mars is going to be at a certain point in the sky. No. In fact, it's Saturn. Saturn sometimes is Venus and Saturn sometimes is Mars. You see what I mean? And for instance, if I say this time, actually Venusian time, is not favorable for getting married, for choosing. I think the word choice is very important here. In Venusian period, in Venusian time, you do not choose. You don't say, I take that, I don't take that. You are as open as possible to all options, and you keep all options open, ready. Even if people tell you that you have to choose, you have to know what you want. There is a time for choosing, like we say the Ecclesiastes, and times where you do not choose. It's better for you not to choose and to postpone the moment of choice. Mars will facilitate the moment of choice. Venus is not the right moment for choice. So, do not engage yourself at the moment of Venus. And engage yourself, even if it means cutting links with other people and limiting your field, which is the result of choice. It's better to wait for the next time of Mars than to do it at the time of Venus. So, to return to the French political situation, I will say that France Mars is not Venusian enough in many ways. It's true also for other countries like Israel. They're not Venusian enough. I mean, they're not open to alliances, to compromises. They are too nationalistic. I tend to oppose the state attitude and the nation attitude. The nation attitude is very xenophobic. They're very limited. Nation is some value which is Mars, and state, secularism, is a value of Venus. And Mars is the time of separating, of severing, of cutting with a knife, with an axe. Venus doesn't cut, and doesn't cut relation, doesn't stop relation, doesn't separate, doesn't choose. So, what is good at a certain moment is bad at another moment. That's a very important law in astrology. Astrology should be defined by the fact that it tells you what's better for you at this very moment. And only at this very moment. And astrological advice is limited in time. There's nothing permanent in astrology. That's why I'm against natal charts. Although we know that in practice most astrologers interpret the chart differently from time to time, so according to the age of the person, etc. I mean, they might interpret the same chart at different moments very differently. So it's a sort of, it's not a real constancy, the chart. Because the words are the same, the signs, the figures are the same, but the interpretation will probably be totally different from. It will depend on the moment that astrologer will work, because he's very much influenced by what he knows, what he sees, what it is around, very much more than he's ready to confess. So, I will not encourage people to do certain things now, but I can also explain when it's going to be all right. That's very clear. When there will be no obstacles, no drawbacks, apparently, to do this at this moment. And since my periods are not very long, and they are only about 3 years more, it will not have, and people do not contact you just at the beginning of the period. It's just a matter of 1 year, 2 years at most, not very much, and better to do that. But we must not forget that before choosing, you have to get the choice. So you have to gather as many possibilities as possible in order at a later time to choose. You cannot just wait and say, well, now I will wait until I have to choose. No, you have to prepare the conditions of the choice.